Thank you, Daniel, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this extra meeting of the executive, held out of sequence on a Monday instead of a Tuesday. We only have one item of business. It's important that we get this response done today so that we get it into the Boundary Commission on time. We have a number of apologies, have we, Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I've got apologies from Councillor Janet Finson, Councillor Greg White, and also Councillor Simon Myers that's attending remote.
Okay, and we have apologies also from Councillor Donna Moncrief, who's just sent me an email to say unfortunately she can't attend the meeting, but she did want me to say that she is right behind the recommendations that we're going to discuss shortly. On screen we've got Councillor Haslam. I'm pleased to see Councillor Wheel there because I'm going to ask Councillor Wheel to actually speak to the response that the working group have come up with. So I'll bring John in a moment. And in the room we've got Councillor Foster, Councillor Verde, and Councillor Lacey. And I think, Peter, this is the first meeting you're attending as leader of the opposition. So good afternoon and welcome. Okay, have I missed anybody, folks? No, so that's going to be apologies. Can we just do this formal bit about the minutes? Are you happy to sign the minutes of the last meeting? Yeah. The record it, saying nods. Thank you. And does anybody have any declarations of interest on to make? Mark, please.
Just make it clear that I sat on the working group, Chairman.
Heather.
As Councillor Crane, I was there as well.
Okay, that's fine. So there's no public participation today. There's no public questions or anybody wanting to speak. So we'll go straight to the response. John, can I come to you, or do you want me to use Will first? No, I'm happy to come to you first, John.
Thank you, Carl. Very happy with that. I've got quite a few things to say, and then I was wondering also if Sam's in the room or on the call, because certain parts of the area I would like Sam to be involved rather than myself. But I'll start anyway. First of all, I'm sorry not to be there today. It is for health reasons, not for travelling reasons. And I'm also sorry that we've had to return to this subject at the executive. But the draft report from the BC received on the 2nd of April was a very unpleasant shock, as the Boundary Commission had agreed with most of the boundaries submitted by the Liberal Democrat group and rejected many divisions of boundaries from the cross-party member group who had worked on this very complex issue for almost all of 2024. Now, there have been 3 reports. The first was the report of the cross-party members working group with the recommendations which went as the executive agreed on the 18th of November, sorry. Then came the draft report of the Local Government Boundary Commission for England, received on the 2nd of April. And then there's the latest report, which we're discussing today, which is from the cross-party member group, which has been reconvened and is in effect the response to the draft report of the Boundary Commission. And that is the whole subject of today's meeting. It's not about other submissions that have been or may be put in. It is about that report only. This has been agreed, and this has to be agreed today or amended by the executive and submitted today, as I understand it, as you've just said, Sir Chairman. When the first of these reports was submitted, I think we made an error by referring to it as the council proposal, the submission from the cross-party member working group. And I think we all take some responsibility for that error. You will be pleased to know that I will not be commenting on on what are now the 70, on all of the what are now 87 divisions, but will refer to a number which I consider to be logistically difficult. I am not going to comment at any length about weather conditions or different elevations in North Yorkshire, but I would like to say quite a bit about one subject that was completely missing in the report, the draft Boundary Commission report. That is one of the greatest difficulties of both services and servicing in North Yorkshire is the rivers. And it looks to me as if they've had after the Boundary Commission have had a flat piece of paper and ignored the little blue lines, or sometimes not so little blue lines, that are the rivers. And so that's what I'm concentrating on more than anything else today. There's lots of river crossings that are very good and very easy, lots of other river crossings that result in many, many miles of driving if you don't get it right. Can I start and just talk about 5 divisions as proposed in the draft report? And I'm starting with Tollerton and Ousbourne division, and if anyone wants to follow it on the agenda, it is referred to in paras 39, 40 and 41. This is an interesting concept, to join 2 villages that have really nothing in common whatsoever and have been across the river. I had an interesting little bit of research that I did a couple of days ago, because the report says it crosses the River Ure. I've always been of the view that it crossed the one bridge crossed over the River Ouse, and having looked at it on the internet, I find that both are probably right. So which is the absolute right, I'm not sure. Alderwalk Bridge is not a county bridge. It is a privately owned bridge that has been closed for something over a year within the last 2 years. It is of a basically wooden structure, and most importantly of all, it has a wooden deck. It does not have a tarmac road across it. It's single lane, and I consider as the only route directly from the Tollerton side to the Ousbourne side that it is totally unsuitable. And also Tollerton and Ousbourne, as I'm said before, and I'll say again, don't have a great deal in common anyway. The second one I would like to comment on is just moving upriver slightly in Dishforth and Dalton. I had great difficulty seeing any synergy between those 2 villages, apart from the initial of their name and the fact that they once, over 80 years ago now, had an RAF station of their name. They're totally different villages, and one has always been in Harrogate district, has very good links to the motorway, and the other has become very much an industrial village. But I would like to read you just 2 little extracts from the papers that were presented at the first seminar on the 6th of December 2023. The first one talks about recommendations for division boundaries. This is from the Boundary Commission, will normally provide for people to move between all parts of the district without having to venture into another division. The second one is about detached divisions. The Commission is sometimes presented with proposals to include 2 geographically separate areas in the same division. We will not usually accept a proposal of this kind, except in very extraordinary circumstances, such as an offshore island, etc. So I won't go any further. My reason for saying that is that there is really no direct link between Dalton and Dishforth. There's there's a quite easy link which puts you out onto the dual carriageway 168 road and takes you off the other end of the 168 road, but you've passed through the division of Sowerby and Topcliffe to get there. There is a very tortuous route going the other direction, which is very, very narrow and peters out into a farm track at one point. So it really is not joined. So I can't really think that they are two areas that could amalgamate very easily into one division, and I don't see any great cohesion between the two villages. South Swale Villages is the next one going north, again up the side of the river. By this time it is undoubtedly the River Swale, and the same thing applies, that the east of the river and the west of the river do not have a direct joining point. So they are in effect two detached divisions. I don't know where this term South Swale Villages came from, no idea. But in that sort of area, we usually refer to villages as being linked to a market town, because of the market town being the service area, the market town being the place where you go to school and where you go to the doctors and shop and so on. And the west side of these is really Bedale villages, and the east side are Thirsk villages. They're not South Swale villages at all. Sorry, I should have said on that one, if you want to follow it, it's paras 33 and 34. In fact, if I might point out, the whole constituency of Thirsk and Malton has the same gap. East of the river has not a direct whatsoever to the east of the River Swale at that point. Those are my three really big red lines. I think all three are completely and utterly unworkable. Then moving on further north still to an area that I know well, and I need to declare that it is the division that I represent. That's Ayskew and Leeming Bar. Again, you can follow what is said in the agenda paper at paras 35 and 36. There are two wards of the same parish split by the A1 motorway. Ayskew is a very residential area, 1,700 electors. Leeming Bar is very largely industrial, with a very large industrial estate and an industrial history as well, with about 1,000 electors. They have been separate for a very long time. In fact, if I tell you, I've represented Ayskew for 42 years and Leeming Bar for 2 years, because they were only put together at the initial election for the Unitary Council, which started in 2023. The final one I want to talk about, but I can come back to saying a few words if anybody brings up any others, is it's not a division at all at the moment. It's two divisions, really. Pateley Bridge and Nidderdale and Wharfdale. Highly controversial. There's quite a lot written about it in the report at paras 15, 16, 17 and 18. When the cross-party working group first talked about this, they came to the same conclusion as the Boundary Commission. Excuse me. You can tell why I'm not with you. And then we came back at a second meeting and looked at it and said, this doesn't work. We've got to do something quite different. And that's why we came up with the recommendation that the executive approved and was presented to the Boundary Commission. The reason is, first of all, the areas are very different. Upper Nidderdale and Upper Wharfdale have really a lot of things in common. They are very, very strong tourist areas, and in terms of farming, they are very traditional indeed, with sheep farming and cattle rearing, and they have a bigger number of retired people. The lower of the two dales, Wharfdale and Nidderdale, are more commuter areas with very nice villages. The agriculture even is different, with dairy farming and some arable farming, and they commute to Ilkley, Otley, Bradford, Leeds, and of course Harrogate. They are far better with each other and keep the two dales together, upper dales together. As I say, I realise this is quite controversial. There's also a mileage difference in this, because from the top end of Wharfdale coming round into Upper Nidderdale, although you can't get directly across, is less mileage than going down to some of the villages like Asquith and Denton and Farnley and so on. So it is, although I know Andrew will speak against this, it is, I believe, the right way to go. I think for the moment, Chairman, that's all I would like to say. If any points I've missed, if Will would like to come in, that would be ideal, or anyone else.
Because obviously, in terms of the report itself, we've tried to balance the views to give a general feeling of the broad sort of balance of views across the member working group. That's not to say, of course, within the working group, there wouldn't be some other preferences for certain different patterns in different areas, but there was a recognition across the basis.
Thank you. And I think I just want to repeat what John said right at the start, that we should have emphasised more that this was the council's cross-party working group that actually came up with the initial set of recommendations. So can I open it up then for discussion? Who'd like to go first? Kevin.
I'd just like to say how I was member of the working group, how difficult this was, and actually we were caught unawares by sticking to the rules, I think, because we were told one members. The only vote we had was one members ward, and we did stick by that, and that seemed to stop the flexibility of a lot of things. So it was really difficult. I'd just like to comment a couple of bits on the report that it goes on about cross-party. There's no doubt it was cross-party, but there was differences that were left at times when we ran out of time. It was really difficult work, and then small groups did their own bit and come back. So, I mean, although I'm not 100% in agreement with what was said, there was bits, but there is chances for them groups to put their opinion on the report when I've got it said, look, this was not a completely cross-party agreement. There was some minor differences and some major differences for other people, but generally there was some give and take as what's been said. I have myself, there are a couple of bits that I didn't quite agree with. I've submitted reports myself. It's a democratic process, and ultimately it's up to the executive committee that what they put through. It's entirely up to them, but we have our own choices to put through. So I see that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And ultimately, the commission will decide what's going on. So it was not easy, this, and it took an awful lot of time of everybody's there. But generally, the group worked together. But you're never going to get a working group. It was quite a large working group, 100% agreement. It's impossible. But generally, I think it was there, but there was some minor differences. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Anybody else wants to come in? Andrew?
Yes, thanks, Chair, for allowing me to speak. Just at one point that as we mentioned that the submission was not from the Liberal Democrat group, it was from the Liberal Democrat Party of North Yorkshire. So I just wanted to clarify that. The issue of Nidderdale and Wharfdale, and there is a difference, by the way. The issue of Nidderdale and Wharfdale, of course, Councillor Wheel structured the divisions on the basis of rivers. And you'll all know that actually the Wharfe and the Nid are different rivers. And indeed, there's a huge difference between the two areas. The distances from the north of Wharfdale to the north of Nidderdale and Middlesmore is much greater than the distance from the north of Wharfdale to the south of Wharfdale. So the distances are great. And of course, there's about 10 miles of moorland between the two divisions. So the idea that administratively this will be easier and more straightforward to represent, I disagree. And of course, you'll know that there have been many submissions, and of course I accept that we can all make submissions, and I've made submissions. But I think it's quite important that the executive sees that there have been numerous submissions from organisations, both representative organisations in terms of parish councils, but also those other organisations, of which there are more than a dozen, that operate within Nidderdale. The Nidderdale Strategic Partnership, which is being held by the North Yorkshire Council currently to re-establish itself, but Nid Plus, Churches in Nidderdale, all sorts of sports organisations, the Nidderdale Cricket League, they're not called Nidderdale for nothing. And Nidderdale really does want to maintain its identity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. John, your hand's up. You want to come in?
If I one position, one situation, Chairman, that Andrew's just come up with, the only person who is regularly disadvantaged by a larger division with lots of miles in it is actually the elected councillor. It doesn't affect the cricket clubs, the Women's Institute, the various organisations. And there's often a misunderstanding of that. So it's how we can make it fit best so as a member is representing the same type of people is really the sort of thing that I've been looking to try to do. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Andrew,
Go back. I mean, the divisions that you have at the moment actually develop. Paley Bridge Town Council is, of course, two amalgamation of Upper and Lower Bishopside. Actually, the division that the working group have proposed divides Paley Bridge into two. If you think that's easier to administer with two divisions and two different councillors on the North Yorkshire Council, then I think that's a mistaken view.
Yes. Okay. Well,
hearing what people have said, we're in a difficult position because if somebody wants us to pick this apart and find that you will be here, colleagues, till well into Thursday, I suspect, because we spent many, many hours going through all of this, many, many hours under the chairmanship of Councillor Will, and everybody was almost signed up to what we've put forward now and is here. I don't agree with all of it. I'm going to be honest. I've told you before that I think if we're going for one-person divisions, there should be 89 single-person divisions. I do not think it's right that the people in Sherburn should get 2 votes or get 1 vote. I think everybody ever consider doing it for parliamentary elections, would you never, ever consider doing that? That being said, I'm going to support what's on the table today because it's been through a very lengthy process. And what we have, I think, is something that the vast majority of the working group signed up to, and I think everybody voted on. I respect Councillor Foster's right to put in some variances, and Councillor Murday has got the right to, or any one of us has, of course. But what we have in front of us came through many hours, many hours of discussion by the working group, and I think is at the moment the best solution, albeit I don't agree with the 2-member wall.
Paul.
Hi, thank you. I'd just like to thank the working group for all the hard work they've done. I mean, it's tremendously difficult, all this. I just wanted to comment on something that was in the paper, just in case it needed to sort of dot the I and cross the T. I think it's paragraph 76. It asks whether Knox should be included in the Grange ward, and it wouldn't be right because Knox Valley Park is actually in Bilton and Nid Gorge. It would create confusion. It was just really I was just sort of crossing the I's and dotting the T's for you. I noticed there was nothing in the submission that's going back, but I did want to just confirm that it would not be appropriate to put Knox in Bilton Grange, in my opinion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul.
Carlton among it now. So I'm pleased that that's been recognised by our submission. And if the Boundary Commission are serious about holding communities and types of communities together, they will recognise that. And I must say, just not for really the substance of the report, politically, it's probably more advantageous to the division of Thirst to lose Carlton Minion, if I may say, but that's not what we're about, actually.
Thank you, Gary. Anybody else want to?
oppose what the Boundary Commission have said without going into any great detail. Helmsley division, taking it away from where they look all the time, is just not a feasible or sensible thing to do. And not a feasible or sensible thing to do. And also we've agreed with the Boundary Commission on 2 villages that most of you will never have heard of, called Middleton-on-Leven and Scutterskelf, in first place. And then there's a very little village called Catton that some of you may be aware of. It has been isolated totally. Dishforth and Dalton, it can't get to Dishforth and Dalton without going through either Skipton-on-Swale or Topcliffe, which it's not linked to without putting a new bridge in. So there are little things like that. Bentham and Ingleton have had Clapham taken away from them. This is just tinkering, and really we shouldn't be just tinkering for the sake of it. I think I should what Mark said about 2-member divisions. We started when we did this working group with the very first vote we took, and process 1 member, 1 division everywhere is that Sherburn, this is Sherburn in Elmet, better make that clear, is too big for 1 ward and not big enough for 2, and 2, which we looked at in great detail, was just about impossible. I think hopefully this is the last meeting. If I can just fly a personal flag here, if the people had listened to less councillors would fit the written report, so leave it there. Can I also thank people for their support? Will was new to this and new to North Yorkshire to a large extent, and new to somebody who'd been around as long as me, so it took us halfway through the process to get on the same wavelength, and also to thank the various people who came in particular Harriet, the committee clerk, who was absolutely superb. I think that's all I want to say, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, John. Anybody else want to have a final say before we move to the recommendation? All right, would somebody like to move the recommendation on page 8? Mark, thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. 2 members of the working group. Okay, so let's take a formal show of hands on that. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. That brings this meeting to a close. Thank you. There is a forward plan, and then any other items of urgency, I'm going to be notified of any. So we'll close the meeting.
I could report it to my useless one. Sorry, I didn't.
Plans on.
Yes, it was on the division line now anyway.
Yes, that's that. A meeting which starts at 5. Oh, sorry. You got me to 26.